Scott here on Flip That Script. And today I wanted to talk to you about finding the lessons in your overall experience of the emotional abuse of toxic family members, and hopefully also in your journey of healing and putting an end to, or at the very least, greatly minimizing your further experience of it. And in ultimately finding meaning and purpose in all of this. I feel like all of us that undergo these kinds of toxic family dynamics and then ultimately wake up to them and do something to change the course of all of this, definitely learn lessons. Some of the lessons are very, very difficult because it's very hard to accept the truth, or truths, I should say. These truths include the fact that we really can never have the kind of relationship with these types of family members that we probably always wanted and maybe still do want, but that's simply not to be. It's a very tough lesson to learn and come to acknowledge that not all families actually love. It's a tough lesson to learn that they really don't care about how they've hurt you, and that they will never apologize or feel any remorse, and that they just feel entitled to talk to you and treat you with such utter disregard and with the lack of the basic respect, dignity, and decency that you expect really from anybody, let alone would expect more so to be forthcoming from your own family. A real tough lesson to learn, or let's just say a part of the way that those hard lessons could be learned, is when you finally and unequivocally communicate that you take issue with the way that they are treating you and have treated you. And if you cite certain instances, you will quickly discover that there's no remorse, that there's no apology, that there's total denial, no acknowledgement, and they'll literally do the blame shifting, minimizing, and painting you out as oversensitive and crazy, and even gaslighting you and telling you that you misremember or that you're magnifying things, taking them out of context, and on and on and on. So it's a very difficult lesson to learn, that there's really no solution, not at least in terms of what you would have wanted as a solution. There's no rectifying or improving the situation or the dynamic or getting them to see your point of view or to acknowledge that they've ever done even the slightest thing wrong. That's kind of the crux of the whole problem, is the combination of the behaviors along with the refusal to take responsibility or to have insight into what they're doing or to make any conscious choice to change. Even when the ultimate price that they may pay is that they may lose you if and when you decide to walk away. It's very difficult to learn the reality of all this because of the fact that it's so difficult to accept that this is the real truth of the situation, and this is what typically presents itself when you have family members that are narcissistic or high on the spectrum or have some kind of other cluster B type of personality disorder. It's just so deeply entrenched in them, including their inability to ever see or acknowledge that anything that they're doing is wrong. When we stand up for ourselves and finally decide to do something about it, this is when we kind of learn to be more assertive. We learn that we deserve better. In watching YouTube videos and channels like my own and others, and reading books and resources, reading blogs and articles, we can learn a lot, pardon me, about why they are the way that they are. I think that we learn that it's not us. We learn to not take what has happened personally by understanding that their dysfunctional behavior and tendencies, etc., are all rooted in their own issues and trauma, personality disorders, or disorder that they suffer from. It's very important, I think, that we learn that we're not to blame. The other thing that I can say, apart from what we learned through all this, is that we all struggle to make meaning of difficult experiences and perhaps to find some kind of purpose in them. To me, I think when we undergo all of this, it's going to sound cliche, but what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And I think that definitely applies to undergoing all this. And in fact, we're a lot stronger than we may have ever acknowledged, because to be the target or the scapegoat of a toxic family system is a very painful experience, and you may have endured it for decades. That means that you're a very strong person, that you have survived this. I think that we really come home to ourselves and learn to know ourselves better, to acknowledge our strengths, the things that we have going for us, and the traits that are positive and beneficial to ourselves and our own lives and to others. And over time, I think it's important that while acknowledging and working through and unpacking the pain and the grief of all of this, to me, the most important thing is that we eventually learn to understand that even though we've been victimized and that we have been victims of abuse, that ultimately this does not define us. We can go from surviving, being a victim, to surviving, and then eventually thriving. Again, I think it's important that over time that we kind of integrate this experience into the larger picture of our whole life and all of our other experiences, including the positive ones, and to transcend that identity of victim to an identity that transcends that mentality and that mindset, so that this is integral to our experience, but not something that limits us or that makes us view ourselves as victims, because we can indeed heal and thrive. There's a couple of biblical quotes. I'm not a religious person, but more of spiritual, but there's a couple biblical quotes that I think fit into this experience, especially if you want to take the route of forgiveness, and also if you want to find deeper meaning and purpose in everything that you've undergone. The first quote is when Jesus was being crucified, and he said, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Now, this is not me denying that toxic, narcissistic, abusive family members don't do certain things on purpose and with the intention of hurting or harming us. But in the larger context, if you think about what a dysfunctional and sad kind of existence that reflects, on a certain level, it does mean that they don't know what they're doing, because their toxic ways really deprive them of the kind of joy and meaningfulness and fulfillment and connection that those of us who don't have an abusive personality get to experience. So yes, I believe on a certain level that they don't know what they do. Especially if you think about the fact that these types of people have very low insight into themselves and into the impact that they have on others. The other biblical quote that I have been thinking of in recent weeks and months pertains to finding some kind of purpose to all of this. And that is kind of in what I'm doing and having created this channel and its content and in writing my autobiography. And it relates to the biblical quote, "To whom much is given, much is expected." To me, this is deeply meaningful because it's kind of like in experiencing all of this and finding your way to the other side of it, as I have largely. I think it's still an ongoing process, but I've come a long, long way by actually dealing with and confronting the reality of all this and going through my process. I feel like a lot is expected of me in sharing this and helping to light the way for other people that might be in the process of awakening to all of this and wanting to find their way out of it into a better and more joyful and way of life that's free of this abuse, or at the very least, in which it's greatly minimized. So I feel like in creating this channel and writing my autobiography, I have helped fulfill some kind of a purpose in being a source and a resource for others that may be looking to liberate themselves from toxic family dynamics. I feel like we just learn so much more about ourselves and grow even stronger when we reach the point of no more. We learn to focus on the things that are most important to us and of value, and we come to more greatly appreciate our genuine and authentic connection with others when we learn that we deserve better and that we do what it takes to claim that and to make a life where this eventually becomes a less important and less impactful thing. When we learn to heal and grow, we can ultimately find purpose and very much greater clarity about what we value, what's important to us, and how to create a better life for ourselves.